President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday launched the Nigeria Agenda 2050, declaring that its implementation would ensure that Nigeria attains a per capita GDP of $33,000 per annum to place her among the top middle-income economies globally by the year 2050. Buhari said the plan would also increase real GDP growth by 7%, create 165 million new jobs, and reduce the number of Nigerians living in poverty to 2.1 million in 2050 from 83 million estimated in 2020. Now we have in the studio to help us evaluate the 2050 economic agenda, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. He is a development economist, and also Paul Alaje is senior economist at SPM Professionals. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, so Doctor, let's start with some key components of the plan. Now, it says Nigeria is to attain a per capita GDP of $33,000 per annum to place her among the top middle income earners in the world. Now, increasing real GDP growth by 7%, creating 165 million jobs, and much more. Looking at the current economic situation and projecting to 2050, is this viable?
Okay, there's what they call walking the talk.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why sometimes if you're not very careful, the other side of it is talk is cheap. Okay. That's also where you bring in rhetorics if you're not very careful. However, to be able to eliminate both talk is cheap and rhetorics, you now need to identify your drivers. Everything that the president said is possible because we have everything it takes to even surpass those expectations. However, if you do not identify, okay, and milestone them, you might be able to misstep. And you can walk back to the answer, no doubt about it. You can also walk towards, your expectations. But remember that the rider here is walk. Okay, either you walk it or you walk it. Okay, so two things I see.
You walk it or you work it.
Yes.
Okay.
So two things I see that must happen here is that we must first identify the work and the work. Okay, what work we need to do and what work needs to be done by who. Okay, first, I would have wanted a situation where I would have seen the subnationals playing a very major role. Okay, because if the two major drivers would be agriculture, where you have, a lot of our people and where that presents a lot of opportunities. Now you will need to first and foremost either start with what it is we have in abundance, which is land, and identify what can be able to make the land yield that fast, which is technology. But I guess, this is just my opening. So it's doable, but we need to think it, through or drill it down, if you may.
All right, Mr. Paul, walking the talk and talk is cheap, and then rhetorics. Perhaps you have an addition to that.
Well, I love the fantastic opening by Doctor. 2050. 2050 to me is equivalent of taking 27 years back and see where we were and where we are today. 2050. Government is hoping that the average GDP, each Nigerian would have been, average Nigerian will be earning 15 million naira per day when you convert to naira. That, per year, yeah. 15 million on the average. The question is, what are Nigerians earning today? And why have we not earned in multiples of what government thought we were? That means over 1 million naira per month. Minimum wage today is 30,000. It's a lot of work.
Indeed.
Walk the talk, but it's a lot of work.
Exactly.
It's not going to be a walk in the park.
So there comes the question of viability.
Here is the point. What that document or the presentation has not said is what our population will be in 2050. In 2050, we'll be 400 million. Today, we are 222 million. Which road are they going to use? Which water are they going to drink if 60% of our population don't have access to potable water as we speak? 133 million Nigerians are living under multidimensional poverty. But we are looking at people even living multidimensional poverty, the nation living low-income country, to placing the economy among the average income earnings. It is possible, it is not impossible, but do we have drivers that can take us to this dream of ours? Do we have those who can drive us and push us to the point we are? There are key points that we must take so that this will not become Vision 2015, it will not become Vision 2020, it will not become Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, and it will also certainly not become the National Development Plan 2021 to 2025. We're in the middle of that plan. The question is, have we been able to achieve over 300 trillion spendings that government hoped for? Because government is saying significant proportion of the monies will be spent by private sector. How much have we captured? What private sector investment has been on this economy? Government, talking about federal, state, and local government, are to also spend some amount of money, you know, in that current national plan, which is the foundation for this Nigeria Agenda 2050. The answer is no. What will be different? What are we going to do differently? We continue to grow population. We are among the fastest growing nation in terms of population. Meanwhile, China, that used to be the largest population in the world, has suddenly released the baton to India. And India used to be the poorest nation in the world, has handed over the baton to us. At that time, we were 7th or 8th largest population in the world. Today, we have grown faster because we are not having conversation about birth control. I think authorities don't even just want to have conversation about birth control. And if you think that will grow by 7%, I'm afraid, because when you look at when last did we grow about 7% since 2014 Q2 till date, we've not been able to go back about 4%. And as we speak, the projection for this year is that we're going to have 3% or 3% plus. So if you are looking at 7% by 2050, what will be different? We've not been. There's so many decisions that we should make now. Unfortunately, whether those decisions will be made, it's a different conversation entirely.
Now, looking at all of the factors, there's still the issue of census. The actual population of Nigeria is still speculative because we still estimate, you know, as at today. And looking at the inflation rate, let's not even talk about the ways and means, which many analysts are saying is going to lead to hyperinflation. But then again, we know that some of the key factors that determines the GDP per capita of a nation, one includes its population, and the other includes access to education, and then there's, of course, transparency. So if you put all of this together, vis-a-vis the vision, the Agenda 2020, and when it comes to population, fine, Nigeria is about 222 million estimated, but then 20 million or 65% of that population are averagely used between the ages of 25 and 20 years, and then we have 20 million out of school children. And when we talk about transparency, the Transparency International said our index is between 20 I think 24 over 100 and then around 158 over 80, with all of these factors which directly affect, you know, the GDP of a country. And then us saying that we have what do you call it now, we're expecting the economy to grow, the GDP to grow by $33,000 by 2050
per capita income,
per capita income 2050, yes. And we're doing $2,065 now, expectedly to increase by 2,500. Isn't this just a pipe dream?
Well, let's put it this way. Okay, we can keep having these discussions, but it's important you need to begin to now create what works for you. Okay, this is why at one time, remember that we'll now introduce what they call the needs, you know, which was supposed to be homegrown, and then it was even drilled down to the seeds, and then further they were taking it to the leads. The capitals being the national, the state, and the local government economic empowerment development strategies. Now, what that means is that you do not build a house from the top, which is what we've been doing in Nigeria all this while, but somehow this house is standing. Now, when you want to begin to build a house, the first thing you do is to dig a foundation. Is that not it? And 80% of the times, the house now becomes aesthetics. Now, for every house to stand, what is holding that house you don't see. So the beginning point should be for us to, you've mentioned a lot of factors. You know, yes, even if you are 200 or 300 or 400 million people, they will be useless to you if they remain resource and not capital. So the difference between you moving from where you should want to be or where you are, you talked about youthful population, 30%, 40%, all those are grammar, statistics, formal statistics. Because in Nigeria, you have three broad economies. Your formal economy, which is less than 10% of your real economy, and then your informal economy, and then your underground economy. Because there are still people that you call the unbanked. Nobody even knows that they're existing. All right, those are the people now who are neither here. They don't have any identity. And then you have the informal economy where you have over 90% of your people. All of us are there struggling. My brother Paul talked about, the poor people and vulnerable people. And I keep saying to people, we are, those of us who think we're better off are more vulnerable. When you actually begin to now talk about distribution of, disposable capital. So point is this, what am I trying to say? If we keep dwelling on what wish list and all that, we're going to keep singing to the choir. I mean, this is a story we've told for 8 years, we told it 20 years ago, we told it 40 years ago, the youth of tomorrow. Last 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years, in parentheses, I'm sure your daddy was holding your hands. Mm-hmm. Today you're holding some other person's hand, as your son. The same thing that your daddy told you, you're telling your son. My father told me, I'm 60 now. Okay, so it is no longer all about us sitting down. It is for us to be able to say to government, maybe this talk has become too consistent. Okay, so we're beginning to now believe, this lie. We're beginning to now, like Goebbels says, tell a lie, many times over, and people begin to believe it. And when I use the word lie, I'm not using it in a derogatory manner. I'm using it because we're focused on one aspect of governance, which should just be some trigger. What is it? Policy. What we're doing is that we're now discussing policy as program and action. Now, that policy is that wish list, which is what the president has done. I wish in this will happen. That's what it is. But the moment you begin to take it, okay, as a development document, you begin to make a mistake. And this is why it's called a plan. I am planning to. I want to. A plan simply to make it very elementary. This is what I will wish to accomplish. Now, for that plan to now take a life of its own and get trajectory, what you need to do is to begin to now attach programs and attach actions. And they have what we call the PPA. So I think that is where I probably think if we're going to be making any headway, let's reduce a little more on the president said. And to start to say, okay, what this president said, how can we be able to achieve it? Which is why what the president or leaders give are what they call anticipatory approvals. Okay, now those of us who are the technical people, yourself, Haja, Paul, are now supposed to go and look at that document that the president has approved and then begin to add, meat, flesh, leg, teeth, heart, and all that to it to be able to make it function.
Yes, this is leading me to my next question. Paul, I've not had the opportunity to read the actual document, but the president has barely, today is the 5th of May, the president has barely 24 days till the end of his administration. So what this means is that implementation of this document will most likely start after he has left. Doesn't this add to the existing pressures, which already, the ways and means plus the existing foreign debt and domestic debt of 46 trillion put together is there, summing up to around 70 trillion naira, plus this implementation
77
plan,
trillion.
77 trillion, I beg your pardon. So doesn't this add to the pressures of an incoming administration, which is even yet to find its feet? It's not even been inaugurated yet, but there's so much to look ahead to.
There's so much expectation, so much that Nigerians are looking up to towards the next administration. But I must quickly say that government is a continuum. If we are coming to office, I think that's some of the mistakes the current administration made. At the time, the administration, there was no subsidy. Before they got to office, getting to office, they said, oh, there is subsidy, 2016, and we're going to remove subsidy. With the pressure of labor, we'll only increase the per litre. Then 2020, subsidy has been removed. It was all over the media houses. That subsidy eventually has been removed by the then Minister of State for Petroleum. So, but for those of us who are economists, we could only but laugh, because government is not looking at so many factors that is determining what will pay as subsidy.
What are some of those factors, if you don't mind?
The major factor today for Nigeria in our case is exchange rate. If our exchange rate today were to be what we had in 2015, which was 199 at official rate and 360 or 370 at parallel market, which was the figure in 2015, if we are adopting that today, there will be no subsidy. Because according to GRDNPC, about last month or 2 months ago, he said the difference they are paying as of then was 200 naira. When you check the difference in the exchange rate, it's even more. Official rate is about 450, 460. Official rate. And parallel market is about 740, 750. So the implication is that the management of monetary policy, devaluation, of currency. And it has other implications because 2021 we devalued Naira, 1 trillion Naira added to our debt profile. Why? From foreign components. So there's a lot of pressure coming for the next administration. But here is the, and this is the pattern. In 2019, when President Buhari was reinaugurated for the second term in office, he said he was going to create 100 million jobs. And we said, it is not enough to say. What is important is how. Can you share a working document? That document never came till we speak. Because that time, we're still running with Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which of course was going to expire. At the end of that year, the World Bank shared that Nigeria has added 5 million poor people in addition to what we had before, net.
As opposed to the 100 million he was.
As opposed to 10 million that should have been created that year. Subsequent year, 2020, we even add more because of the impact of COVID. And of course, 2021 was not an exemption. So government continued to look for ways to help Nigeria come out of poverty and to help Nigeria to be better off. But the challenge is, it is not enough. Anybody can dream. In fact, I can dream that I'm the richest man in the world. I can dream that I'm the best man in the world. The question is, am I going to act to become the richest man in the world? So Nigeria is not bereft of idea or policy that can make us a great country or nation that the whole world will want to emulate. The question lies in our energy to solve the real problems such as power supply, quality education, to provide energy for people, both at the commercial centers, businesses, and also individuals. These are real issues. These are conversations we should have. You see, when all of these are put in place, Nigeria will be great. And if I have just 1 or 2 minutes, Nigeria is not the only nation that is faced with this kind of challenge and came out in 20 years. In the Second World War, and I believe Doctor would agree, in 1945 it ended. People that died as a result of Second World War and people that died after the war because of devastation that the war left behind, hunger, deprivation, and poverty were even more than people that died as a result of the war. Women, it was a tough time to be a woman after the war because for you to survive, you have to pay with your body. And as men, they were carrying guns around. Judiciary was completely collapsed. Policing was not something you want to talk about. This war did not affect Africa as the way it affected Europeans. So most European countries were completely submerged. 1965, 1970, we started seeing different Europe. Today, how do we talk about Europe? Nigeria has almost permanently been in this situation from the 80s till today. We are talking of nearly 40 years or over 40 years. Why is it difficult for us to change the course of action? We have several development plans even before independence till date. Why is it challenging for us to change the story of Nigeria? Implementation, energy, effort, focus, doing the work, and selflessness. Lee Kuan Yew became selfless. That's why he's able to bring his people and mention all leaders around the world. But even if you are selfless and you are not corrupt, knowing what to do and the willingness to do what to do, it's another thing entirely.
So this brings us back to the conversation of walking the talk, matching your talk with action, and also the rhetorics. So, Doctor, are we now saying that what our politicians do or our government does is wait till the crescendo of the administration and then launch something that they could talk about and say at least he launched a plan? Because I knew then, even though it was at the beginning of his administration, and many had said perhaps if he was alive he would have seen to the implementation. I'm talking about the 7-point agenda by the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. So we've seen a lot of these national development plan, but what we've not seen or heard is a re-evaluation to know whether there were some form of successes in its implementation. Division 2020, nobody is talking about it anymore. How far with that? So is this just another ploy to launch, like you said, Mr. President said, and then leave it for someone else to bear the brunt?
No, it's also us not understanding that the 3 tiers of government does not report to the president. Okay, and that's the 100% that they share, I think the federal system gets I think about 48% of it. That the remaining 52% is actually in the hands, okay, of the subnationals. It is because you have not understood that the federal government has little or no land. So when the federal government is launching an agricultural policy, what anybody who understands it should be looking at is say, what about the people who have the land? Where are they in this picture? Are they coming in as invitees? Are they coming in as part of the people that developed this plan? Okay, so for every time you want to say, oh, the Buhari's administration, it will only be kind if you say Buhari's administration at the federal level, so that you can be able to, keep it. But again, the failures now, because of this low understanding or misunderstanding, the failures of the subnation has now become the collateral failures of the office of Mr. President. So, and he has limitations to what can happen, to what should happen, and how it can happen. Now, this now brings to bear what the problem is. The problem is that, one, we are running our governance structures on silos. There are no synergies. Okay, when you talk about energy is something that every man in the local government wants. And if you don't get that power to the local governments, you have not started. But remember, the local government also have their own funding. What did they do with it? The state governments have their own funding. What did they do with it? So if you don't have a program that's able to tie rural electrification to state electrification to national, you're not able to now build that holistic grid that can now be able to give you what it is the requirement is. So I think two things. The major thing that I think has been the failure of government has been this silo mentality. Okay, and then somebody thinking that, yes, the buck stops at the table of a president. To what extent? And if you want to understand to what extent, go and look at the exclusive and concurrent list. Now, there are so many things that the state governments are supposed to be doing concurrently. In fact, almost all the things apart from security, power, one or two other things. Now, Paul has spoken about the costs, the exchange rates. To put it simply, so people out there can understand it, it is the cost of the dollar. That's what it is. And if you look at exchange, so it's a very technical thing. No. How much were you buying dollar 20 years ago? How much are you buying dollar now? So each time I tell them that this thing you people call subsidy is actually what they call price differential. Because you cannot subsidize, sustainably what you don't produce. Because in economic development, subsidy is actually a production instrument. And there is no country in the world that does not do subsidy, which is why they subsidize so that they can get their goods to be produced cheaply, and then they go outside there and they compete. That's how they now generate tax. That's how they keep their people in employment. Now, what are we doing? We now go to go and buy these produced goods and say we want our people to buy it at a certain amount of money, okay, or rate. Then what do the people do? You will now begin to now bring in what they call the forces of demand and supply. Today, you come and buy 300. The next day, you come and say, oh, some other person has placed an order. But if you could just, now you're a constant, so they keep changing and increasing the price. So also with that base cost of your currency. So our major problem is that we've not understood. Okay, I keep giving this example each time we're here. If anybody mistakenly walked into the studio now, they might call me Alhaji. Okay, why? Because of the way I'm dressed. Right? Now, Paul, of course, will be the English gentleman. You will be a crossbreed of course, Haja will be noted. But can I tell you guys one thing? All of us, Pakistan, are the best. China, every fabric, that we're wearing here, from thread to needle, to whatever it is you have on your body, imported from either Bangladesh, Pakistan, or China. And they're not even made out of cotton. They're made out of what they call non-woven. And non-woven comes from petrochemicals. Everything you're wearing, So if we don't understand that we need to have people who can be able to dispassionately. Okay, if you're reading the social media now, what the kind of talk you're having? Oh, Igbos will not have any position in Tinubu's administration. Oh, these people are suspended. Oh, that is that. Oh, that is that. The moment you begin to bring governance to that climb, the first thing you do is that you will never get your best. And this has been the bane of Nigeria. You're talking about, I'll rest on this. I mean, the people that, was sport I was talking about, the people that got out of, economic stagnation let's talk about the Igbos. Today, the Igbo apprenticeship system is being studied, at the level of, Ivy League institutions. From £5 that was given from kwashiorkor to leprosy to everything in 30 years. Do you know what they did? Everybody started holding everybody's hands. But one thing people do not understand is that Igbos were not holding Igbo's hands. They were holding Yoruba people's hands. 90% of millionaires, of Igbo extraction made their money in Lagos. People forget that.
Interesting conversation there, Doctor. Okay, let's come back to the agenda. It's emphasized on, creating job employment, about 160 million, which is a whole lot. And before the President, Muhammadu Buhari's administration, he promised a lot of job employment. And people are still saying he hasn't delivered that promise. And right now we're seeing in 2050, there's going to be massive, or should I say, employment. So, Paul, this question is for you. What do you think the government needs to do differently? Because like Doctor said, it is something that they have been promised. We've seen the tell, like we are doing this, but we haven't seen the implementation. So what do the government need to do different in order to attain that huge number?
I think government needs to, my favorite book says we should follow after those who through diligence and patience have received the promise. China used to be the largest population in the world. The population of China is larger than the population of Africa. India, one of the largest, now the largest, and quite a number of other countries. What did they do? The manufacturing component of their GDP was the largest. For Nigeria, what we emphasize the most, and not just Nigeria, the rest of Africa, I don't know, maybe it's the color of our skin, I don't know who lied to us. Everybody is saying, go to farm, go to farm. Nothing is wrong with going to farm. In fact, nothing is wrong with agriculture. But you cannot say people should go to farm and you leave them in peasant farming. It's not structured. It's not organized. There are little or no plantations. For me, and what I've observed in our study and economic research of what these countries have done, if you look at Brazil, the largest population in Southern America, you look at Germany, the largest population in Western Europe, you don't know Germany for German farms. You know Germany for German machines, manufacturing. The same with America, the same with Brazil, the same even with Russia, which has the largest population in eastern parts of Europe. What is different in the case of Africa? When it comes to Africa, we want even the farming and agriculture, the way we did it in the First Republic is not the way we are doing it now. Who is planting the cocoa? Niger Delta region and southeast part of Nigeria have been known for oil, either crude oil or palm oil. Where is the concentration of crude? The north. See, today, when we talk about north, I cry. When I was growing up, the north was the envy of many regions. Do you want to talk of cocoa pyramid? Granite pyramid? Or you want to talk of Kaduna in 58? That the rest of West Africa envied because of textiles. You want to go to the north. Because it was showing us what the future looks like, apart from Lagos. But what do we have? So when we return, you see, there is a way that seems right, which is destruction. The way is corruption. But there is a way that leads to life, which is the way of production. If you don't produce, why do you want to eat?
All right. All right, then apologies, we have to stop you there because we've run out of time. Mr. Paul Alaje, lead economist at SPM Professionals, I want to thank you so much for your submissions. And also Dr. Emeka Okengu, development economist, thank you so much for coming on the show.